For the past 2 decades or more, I've been interested in and investigated the paranormal. During that time, I've seen and heard many, many strange things. Things that can't be explained away by scientific reasoning or logic. And I'm now convinced that something exists beyond our normal field of experience, which makes me believe in the survival of life after death. What follows are just a few of the many experiences I've had or come into contact with over the last 23 years. It's not my intention to convert you to my way of thinking. I just hope that you'll be entertained by my stories, and perhaps that they might make you wonder a little bit. So settle down, turn the lights low, and enjoy the mysterious world of the shapeless ghosts. Time once again to enter the world of the unexplained. And tonight, I'm going to make an admission. Because I've investigated the paranormal for so many years, I've become unafraid when in the presence of a ghostly occurrence. But there was one time when even I was scared. It happened about 10 years ago when I investigated a strange series of events which had occurred in Devon. The story is this. The first time that this manifestation took place, or at least the first time that it had been recorded, was in 1927. A country doctor was riding down a moorland road in Devon on his motorcycle at about 8 o'clock in the evening, when suddenly he veered off the road and crashed into the ditch at the side. He did not survive. When the police investigated the incident, they could find no explanation as to why the man had left the road with such fatal results. It was put down to a freak accident and left in the files of the local constabulary as an unexplained mystery. Nothing was reported again until 1954, when a young cyclist was riding down this same stretch of road, when suddenly he felt something, he didn't know what, pull at his handlebars, making him swerve off the road into the ditch. Luckily, he wasn't too badly hurt, but his cycle was a write-off, of course. When he tried to explain to the police what had happened, he realized that his story sounded a bit far-fetched. Indeed, the police concluded that he had probably hit a stone in the road by accident, which had caused his front wheel to veer sideways. The time of the incident was, once again, 8 o'clock in the evening. Again, nothing was heard for a few years, until another accident happened at the same spot as the 2 others. This time, a man was driving down the road, and as he approached the deadly spot, he too felt his steering wheel being wrenched out of his hands. Now, with him was his daughter, and she reported after the inevitable accident that just as her father was fighting to gain control of his car, he shouted, and I quote, "It's too strong for me to hold. I can't keep control." Seconds later, the car crashed into the ditch, and the man was killed. His daughter was severely injured, but she steadfastly maintained that she had reported her father's last words accurately. Once again, an investigation was launched by the local police, but no satisfactory explanation was found. Needless to say, the time that the accident had occurred was 8 o'clock in the evening. As you would expect, such a strange occurrence attracted the attention of the press, and many lurid reports found their way into print. And after a while, when nothing further happened, and no explanations except those of a paranormal nature were found, the story faded away into history and was forgotten. Forgotten, that is, until 1980, when once again a fatal accident happened at this haunted spot, yet again at 8 o'clock at night. And just before the latest victim died, he too said that he had felt his steering wheel being wrenched from his hands by an unknown force. This time, I read about it, and I was on holiday in Devon, and I decided to see what I could find out. I went to the spot in the moorland where all the accidents had happened, and as soon as I got there, I felt the presence of something which, for want of a better description, was malevolent. Nothing happened to me, but my curiosity was so aroused that I decided to return at a later date with an experienced medium to see if my impressions were right or not. 2 weeks later, I returned with a medium. We arrived at the spot at about 7:45 p.m. Immediately, the medium stated that she felt uncomfortable. That was the word she used. We located an exact position where we felt the force was strongest and positioned ourselves on either side of the road. As the hour of 8 p.m. approached, we began to feel very apprehensive. The night air seemed to take on a chilly aspect. The temperature had dropped very suddenly. And then, exactly as the hour was striking on the distant church clock, it happened. The medium suddenly cried out in pain and fell to the ground, writhing in silent agony. Her limbs seemed to distort, and her face took on the semblance of sheer evil. As I rushed over the road to help her, I suddenly felt as if I was running into a blanket of fear. I admit freely that I was frightened, an emotion I had not felt since my very early days of investigating paranormal events. I'd covered about half of the road width when something happened to me that had never happened either before or since. I felt as if I was bodily being lifted off the road, and I was flung by an invisible force into the ditch onto the far side. Winded, but determined not to be beaten by this invisible thing, I tried to get up and go to the assistance of the medium, but I couldn't. I was pressed into the damp earth by something that felt like a great weight sitting on my back. This went on for a few seconds, although it seemed like hours, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I picked myself up and went over to my friend, who was also recovering from the shock. We said nothing to each other until we'd driven to a little country pub about 3 miles away. When we'd settled down and had regained our composure, we compared notes of our experience. The interesting fact which emerged was that, as the medium had been writhing on the ground, she distinctly heard the name David and got a clear impression of a soul in torment. And she clearly heard a demonic-type voice telling her to get away and not to interfere with something which didn't concern her or me. When we were fully recovered, we set about researching the event and the area. And to cut a long story short, we found out what we believed to be the explanation to this strange series of events. It appeared that in the 17th century, at the height of the witch hunts which were sweeping the country at the time, there'd been a small village on the site of the road where the accidents had happened. And in the village lived a poor, unfortunate man. He was deformed and disabled, and over the years he had been blamed for anything which had gone wrong. If the crops failed or cows stopped giving milk, this man was blamed. And in 1665, he had been lynched by the villagers who, in their ignorance, had thought that he had caused a pestilence to descend upon their land. A pestilence now known as the Great Plague. Just as the poor man was dying, he cried out that he would never let the people rest, and he would torment their descendants for the rest of time. Revenge would be his. The man's name was David. He was known as David the Monster. The strange postscript to this unnerving tale is that further research told us that all the victims were distant descendants of the villagers of 1665. And I am firmly convinced that my friend and I are only here to tell the tale because we were strangers to the area. Remember the words that the medium had heard. Get away and don't interfere with something that doesn't concern you. There, but for the grace of God.